Hello, welcome to the Bible Nerds podcast. My name is Ben, and joining me are Tisha and Kuyamon,
Hello.
Hello.
and we will be continuing our journey. It's the last stretch of the Book of Numbers.
Yup.
It's been going really quickly.
Yup.
What?
Yeah, and I think it's been pretty exciting, and we've been learning a lot about.
That's true.
And I think that's appropriate because the wilderness, where this is all set, is God's classroom.
Yeah.
So
We're meant to learn a lot and fail a lot.
yeah,
And learn from them.
yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully not do them again.
Hopefully.
And so, what are we going to learn today?
We're gonna talk about Balaam.
Balaam. Yep. So we're going to be jumping into Numbers chapter 22 to 24, right? And we're going to be talking about, or particularly focusing on, the very interesting and complex story of Balaam the sorcerer.
The sorcerer.
Yeah. So just to give you context, the chapters before this section actually cover some of the victories that the new generation of Israelites have been experiencing, right? In fact, they even overcome the same place where they were defeated by the king of Arad back, when they rebelled with the spies,
Yeah.
right? And then
Right.
they rebelled when they heard the spies report, and God was not happy with that. And they said, and God told them that they would not be able to enter the promised land.
Yes.
And they were like, "Oh, so sorry about that. Never mind, we're gonna go and take the promised land." But they're utterly
Doesn't work,
defeated.
yeah.
They're utterly defeated by the king of Arad at Horma.
Yeah.
Horma. Yeah. And so the next generation
Yes.
has been winning these tribal battles.
Yeah. So
Right.
it's just painting this portrait that this new generation is different from the old one.
And they're sort of stepping into the promise that God has
Right.
given Israel, that they are going to enter and receive this land
Yeah.
as a gift,
Cool.
right? So obviously, all of this military success is concerning for the Canaanites living in the land. And one of them is the king of Moab. His name is Balak, right?
Balak.
Which is quite similar to the name of the sorcerer Balaam.
Yeah.
So just don't get them confused. There's Balak,
Balak and
the king
Balaam.
of Moab,
Yeah.
and Balaam, the sorcerer.
Balak
Yeah.
for king.
Yes.
Balaam for
Magician.
magician.
Okay. It's like stalactite and stalactite.
Hold
Okay.
on tight.
Okay. Hold on tight.
Yeah, stalactite.
Hold on
I've
tight.
never heard of that.
Yeah.
Me too.
Because stalactite is above.
I thought it was stalactite because C for the ceiling and
okay,
stalagmite
okay.
G for the ground.
Right.
Wow.
Okay.
I've never heard of those things.
So how did you memorize the difference between the pointy, sharp rocks and caves?
I don't know. I just memorized them.
Okay. So King Balak is troubled because you have this army of Israelites that are so numerous. They're as numerous as the dust of the earth and the stars in the sky. And so what he does is he consults and requests for the help of the ancient Near East's most famous and most renowned sorcerer named Balaam. So what's interesting is we've actually discovered in our archaeological dig sites within the area of where all of this was taking place, we found inscriptions of the name of Balaam, son of Beor, who would hear the voice of the gods at night in his dreams. So this guy was a famous guy, right? Like even outside the Bible, and we find him featured here. It's like a cameo.
Cameo.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when you're watching a TV series and then suddenly there's this famous guy who's in the
Right.
episode. Like they hired
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran to
Yeah.
say one line or something.
Mm.
But instead of one line, Balaam actually gets 2 chapters just dedicated to, it's one of the longest. I believe it's actually the longest narrative in the book of Numbers.
Uh-huh.
And it's very complex and intricately designed.
Okay. Take us through it.
Okay, so the story is divided into 6 main acts across 6 days, 2 sets of 3. It's actually really, really highly organized, and is one of the examples of how the Bible is a literary genius.
Right.
Yeah, I actually have the chart here. Our listeners cannot see it, even if they're in the video, they can't see it. But I'm actually opening my commentary on Numbers by Gordon Wenham, who's charted it out here, the 6 days.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the first 3 sets of things that happen are Balaam's encounter with God, and then the second set of 3 actions are him blessing Israel. But we'll get to that, because King Balak obviously wasn't hiring Balaam to bless Israel.
Yeah.
He was hiring Balaam to pronounce a curse.
Yeah.
Right? Balak is terrified of what Israel
Can do.
could do. This nation that is at the border of his land
Right.
spells nothing but trouble for him.
Yeah.
And so his plan is to hire the most world-renowned sorcerer at the time to pronounce a curse.
Yeah.
And if you've been following the story of the Bible with us here in the feast, we've been talking about how blessing and curse, pronouncing blessing over something, pronouncing curse over
Yes.
something, was something that was really sort of central or integral to the way they perceive the world. As if, when you pronounce a curse or a blessing on someone, it causes an immediate effect that will be seen throughout the life of that person or thing that gets blessed or cursed. Right? So why don't we just read through the story? It's really fascinating. Or Kuimon, you actually have it open. Maybe you can read to us. What
Verse?
version do you have over there?
NCB.
Nice. Why don't you just read Numbers 22? Maybe starting from verse 3.
Verse 3 all the way to...
Yeah, maybe just read and then let's see.
Okay. And Moab was terrified because there were so many people, and Moab was filled with dread of the people of Israel. Moab said to the elders of Midian, "This mob will lick up everything around us, just like an ox licks up grass in the pasture." Balak, the son of Zippor, was the king of the Moabites at this time. He sent messengers to Pethor, which is near the river in his native land, to Balaam, the son of Beor, to summon him. He said, "Behold, a people has come out of Egypt, and they cover the surface of the earth. They are now living opposite me. Please, come now and curse this people for me, for they are too powerful for me. Maybe then I will be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. I know well that whomever you bless is blessed, and whomever you curse is cursed."
Right. So, some interesting things to note. Moab is collaborating with another nation, the Midianites. So both the Moabites and the Midianites have sent messengers to Balaam to request for his sorcery.
Services.
Yeah, his services.
Parang bounty hunter.
Something like that. That's kind of the picture. And you can see how alarmed the Canaanites are, because you have these 2 tribes who don't really like each other, but and
They're working together.
they're working together against their common enemy,
Right.
which is the Israelites. Which is, I really think this is one of the coolest sections in the Hebrew Bible, because it's kind of like a shift of POV, right? Because almost always seeing things through the lens of the Israelites.
Right.
Yes.
But
Yes.
here we're seeing
The enemy's camp.
yeah. Yeah, the thoughts and the fears of the Canaanites, and they're collaborating to bring down their common enemy.
Yeah, sounds like a really cool movie.
It sounds and feels like this whole section like is only rivaled by the section about Korah for me in terms of the drama and the action that takes place.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, maybe I just wanted to note that they cover the face of the earth.
I know.
Right.
Mm.
So we're seeing here that and this is something that we're gonna see repeated in this section
Mhm.
about the number, right? The number of Israelites, and in fact, in the next two chapters, I think after this one, we're gonna see the second census. So there's definitely a repeated emphasis on the size of the Israelites who are fulfilling the Genesis 1 mandate,
Mm.
right? To fill and subdue the earth, to multiply, be fruitful and multiply, and fill and subdue the earth.
Yeah.
Okay, Quimon, could you keep reading for us?
Verse 7. The elders of Moab and the elders of Midian left, carrying the fee for the divination in their hands. They came to Balaam, and they told him what Balak had said. He said to them, "Spend the night here, and I will bring you the answer the Lord gives me." So the leaders of Moab stayed with Balaam. God came to Balaam and said, "Who are these men with you?" Balaam said to God, "Balak, the son of Zippor, the king of Moab, sent for me, saying, Behold, a people has come out of Egypt who now covers the face of the earth. Now come and curse them for me, perhaps I will be able to defeat them and drive them away." But God said to Balaam, "Do not go with them. Do not curse the people, for they are blessed."
Awesome. So this is really interesting. Tisha, your face looks like you have so many questions.
No, because God is speaking to somebody who is not one
Right.
of his people.
Right. So we mentioned this already, that Balaam is a sorcerer,
Mm-hmm.
and sorcery is not really something that God's people do.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, it's very much frowned upon.
Yeah.
And and so here we have a pagan sorcerer
Yeah.
who is being hired to speak down curses upon the Israelite camp. But what happens, very interesting, he consults Yahweh,
Yeah.
right? And Yahweh tells him, no, you can't curse them because they are a blessed people.
Yeah.
Right. Very interesting. So this is like I mentioned, it's 6 sets of things that happen. Or sorry, 2 sets of 3. So what's actually going to happen is the king of Moab, Balak, is going to petition Balaam to curse Israel, and Balaam is going to talk to God 3 times.
Mm.
The first 2 times, Balaam is going to be the one to consult God, to consult Yahweh. The third time, God is going to show up. And the third one, and both the 2 sets are the longest parts of the narrative. So there's really a literary design going on here. So the end of this first encounter with God, right? Balaam consults God in his dreams, and God says, "No, you can't curse the Israelites because they are already blessed."
Yeah.
Okay, so let's read the second one.
The next morning, Balaam arose and said to Balak's representatives, "Go back to your country, for the Lord refuses to allow me to go with you." The leaders of Moab returned and said to Balak, "Balaam refused to come with us." So Balak sent some more leaders, even more distinguished than the others. They came to
We'll
Balaam.
send them more VVIPs.
Perhaps he will be convinced.
Yeah.
They came to Balaam and said to him, "Thus says Balak the son of Zippor, Please, let nothing keep you from coming to me, for I will honor you greatly, and I will do whatever you ask of me. Please come and curse this people." Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, "If Balak were to grant me his house full of silver and gold, I could not do anything, small or great, contrary to the word of the Lord my God. But now, please, stay here this night as well, so that I may know what the Lord says to me. God came to Balaam at night and said to him, If these men have come to summon you, rise up and go with them, but do only what I tell you.
Right. So this is interesting. The second time the second time this happens, right? Balak has sent even more entourage and
Even more distinguished.
more
than the-
distinguished guests to come to Balaam's house. And Balaam says, no matter, even if you have like a house full of gold and silver that you were to give me, I'm just going to do what the Lord tells me, okay? Which is really interesting and maybe a little out of character.
Yeah.
for a notorious
For a
sorcerer.
notorious sorcerer.
Yeah.
You can really tell that this is playing this text is sort of in the land of Jonah, right? This is almost like satire,
Right.
where we're seeing important famous characters being put in unique and crazy situations,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think what's interesting here though is God sort of changes his mind and says that he can go
Yeah.
with these princes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Balak sent the right people or something, but there is a condition, right? The condition is only do what I tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to the third encounter that Balaam has with God, and it's the longest one.
From verse 21, Balaam arose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the leaders of Moab. But God grew very angry because he had gone. And so an angel of the Lord blocked his path on the roadway. He was riding on a donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. The donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the roadway with his drawn sword in his hand. And the donkey left the roadway and wandered into the field. Balaam beat the donkey to force it back onto the roadway.
Yeah.
Then an angel of the Lord stood in the narrow pathway in the vineyards, walls standing on either side. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it pressed so close to the wall that it crushed Balaam's foot against it, and so he beat it again. Then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in a narrow place that had no room to turn either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam, who became very angry and beat it with a staff. The Lord opened the donkey's mouth and it said to Balaam, What have I done to you that you have beaten me these 3 times? Balaam answered the donkey, You have made a fool of me. If I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now. The donkey said to Balaam, Am I not your donkey, which you have always ridden, even till today? Have I ever done this to you before? He said, No. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the roadway with a drawn sword in his hand. He bowed down and fell flat on his face. The angel of the Lord said to him, Why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to oppose you, for the path before you is wrong. The donkey saw me and turned away from these 3 times. Otherwise, I would surely have killed you, but it I would have spared.
Okay.
God would spare the donkey.
Yeah, God would spare the donkey.
Oh, look,
So
a talking horse.
yes, there is a talking donkey in the Bible. This is really like one of the most memorable and craziest stories that we'll ever encounter in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? What are your thoughts about it?
I'm thinking about who wrote this.
Who wrote this?
Well, yeah, it's really interesting. It does give you like really satire, like, can this really have happened?
Right, because the donkey starts talking.
Yeah.
Right.
The donkey's like a cat. You know when you corner a cat and
It's
then
almost
you block off the way.
I also find it interesting how Balaam he's not shocked that the donkey talks.
Yeah.
Well, maybe because he's a sorcerer, so
Yeah.
weird,
Maybe
creepy,
only he can do
creepy
that.
supernatural things happen around him all the
And
time.
it's normal for him, maybe.
But anyway, any other thoughts or
Actually,
anything
maybe it is like ordinary for somebody like Balaam.
Mhm. The angel of the Lord is mentioned here, which blocks the path, which is why the donkey kind of panics, moves to the side, moves to
Yeah.
the
the
donkey
side.
can see the angel of the Lord, but
And-
Balaam can't.
Yeah.
Ah.
Not until later.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have the same language from Exodus with on each side, it's like there's a wall on each side, kind of like how the waters were.
Yeah.
Uh,
Actually, when we were reading about the Balak sending VIPs more
Yeah.
to Balaam, I was really feeling the Exodus with Pharaoh.
oh, I see.
Moses coming, asking, let his people go, but he won't.
Right.
But here, God was like, okay, go.
Yeah.
Mm.
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
That's a good observation.
Nothing. It's just something I
The
saw.
thing that confuses me the most, though, is why did God tell him at night that he can go with the princess, but in the morning when he does go with the princess,
No, you can't.
God gets angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Baka
interesting.
hinayaan nyo na lang. Like when someone's bugging you na, pwede ba tayo mag-Jollibee? Pwede ba tayo mag-Jollibee? Fine. Sige na. Drive-thru na tayo. Parang
And then
And then-
you eat your Jollibee, you buy chicken joy, but you're mad.
yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
So, according to the reading that I did on these texts, it seems that while the words that are coming out of Balaam's mouth are this very pious, very righteous picture of this guy who only does what the Lord says to him, right? Only speaks what the Lord speaks, right, to him. The motives of Balaam possibly were not the most pristine, right? That's something that we find in the Old Testament, that the Bible doesn't really moralize people quite often, right? It's rare that they say, and what this person did was bad in the eyes of the Lord.
Yeah.
Most times it just tells what happens, right? And so it's highly possible in this honor and shame culture, because I was like reflecting on why, if God told Balaam that he was not to curse Israel, why was he asking these guests of honor to stay in his house overnight? Right? Maybe when he mentions, not even a house full of silver and gold, wink, wink, would be enough to persuade me to go against what the Lord says.
Like at this point, that was the motive already.
Maybe the whole time. The cost, the sorcerer cost for his services, where he was jacking up the prices because he knew this was going to mean going against the word of Yahweh, or something like that.
Maybe.
Because in every other mention of Balaam in the rest of the Bible, in Deuteronomy and 2 Peter, they paint Balaam as a bad guy, right? Which is really interesting. So there's really something more than meets the eye.
Yes.
And we're hinted at this when we see that God is angry that Balaam goes with the princess, the leaders of Moab.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, he actually stops him. He stops him by sending the angel of the Lord to stand in his way, right? It's so fascinating. The donkey, right, which is this lowly servant animal.
Yeah.
It's not really, not the smartest creature around.
Yeah.
Right? Is able to perceive the angel of the Lord. Right? But Balaam cannot. And what's interesting is, even if the donkey was already kind of acting weird and trying to, like what you're saying, like a cat trying to move out of the way, Balaam doesn't take notice of that. right? If he was really a good sorcerer, right, wouldn't he notice that as an omen,
Right.
like his animal is acting strange,
Yeah.
but he doesn't. So this part of the text is showing the blindness of Balaam. That and we're gonna see later how the design pattern is actually portraying Balaam as the donkey, who is, or sort of being contrasted with the donkey. That the donkey is smarter than him. Yeah.
Cool.
And ultimately he will be like the donkey later when he goes in between the will of Balak and the will of God. He's
Both
cannot
sides.
escape. He's kind of trapped like the donkey. It's super cool. But we're gonna get to that.
Okay.
But yeah, super interesting. Why don't we keep reading?
Continuing from verse 34. Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned. I did not realize that you were standing there opposing my way. If I have displeased you, then I will go back.
In ESV, it says, if it is evil in your sight, I will turn back.
Whoa.
Okay. The angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but say only what I will tell you. So Balaam went with the leaders to Balak.
Right.
When Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to Moab to meet him, a city which is on the Arnon border,
Right.
at the farthest edge of his territory. Balak said to Balaam, did I not summon you urgently? Why have you not come to me? Am I not able to reward you? Balaam said to Balak, behold, I have come to you now. Do I have any power to say anything? I will speak only the word that God puts in my mouth.
Right. So this is what I'm saying, that Balaam is being, now he's in the place of the donkey who's just going, he has no power, right? And he's only going to speak what God is going to put in his mouth, just like how God put a word in the mouth of the donkey.
I see.
Yeah. So they're so the Bible is comparing the Mesopotamia's most famous sorcerer
to a donkey.
To a talking donkey.
Wow.
Very, very sly jab.
Yeah.
That the Israelites are making. Anyway, so basically what's going to happen is Balaam and Balak are going to go to 3 different locations where Balak will offer these most generous and extravagant sacrifices, right? Of 7 bulls, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 7 oxen and 7 sheep, right? Very costly offerings, 3 times, right? In order to sort of purchase the curse and to curse Israel. Yeah. So the first time they go up Bamoth Baal, right? And so they do the sacrifice, right? Balaam does a complete burnt offering, okay? So this is like the most costly type of offering where the whole animal is sacrificed. Yeah. Balaam and Balak don't get even a rib or or a part of the animal to eat. The whole thing is offered to the Lord, right? And so I'm just going to skip over here to verse 5, right? And the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, return to Balak, and thus you shall speak. And he returned to him, and behold, he and all the princes of Moab were standing beside his burnt offering. Right? You can imagine the scene, right? So Balak and all the other leaders of Moab, they're standing next to their costly offering. They're ready to hear the good news that they've bought the heavens, and Israel's downfall is imminent. But Balaam is a talking donkey to the Lord.
Yeah.
And Balaam took up his discourse and said, from Aram, Balak has brought me, the king of Moab from the eastern mountains. Come, curse Jacob for me, and come, denounce Israel. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? For from the top of the crags I see him, from the hills I behold him. Behold, a people dwelling alone and not counting itself among the nations. So this is an interesting line. He's referring to the uniqueness of Israel, how Israel has been set apart and chosen, right, by God. It's what we've seen from Genesis 12, where God tells Abraham, right, to go leave his nation, his family, his father's household, right, because God has set him apart to be so that his family could be what will later be known as the nation of God's people, right? Who can count the dust of Jacob or number the fourth part of Israel, right? So this is talking about the sheer size, how numerous the descendants of Abraham and his grandson Jacob has become, right? Because that's what God had promised to Abraham, that his seed would be as numerous as the stars. And that is what Balak is perceiving now, right? And the last line, really, really interesting. Let me die the death of the upright, and let my end be like his. So Balak is saying that his desire is to experience the kind of blessing that Israel is living under. Right? To die the death of the righteous. Right. Yeah. Balak did not take lightly or was very happy with what Balaam had done. Verse 11. What have you done to me? I took you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have done nothing but bless them. And he answered and said, must I not take care to speak what the Lord puts in my mouth?
Bad trip din ako kasi Balak eh. Ako nagbayad nito eh.
Yeah, exactly. And you get the opposite order.
Right.
Yeah. So this is going to happen 2 more times. So this is matching the first set of 3, right? So there's a first offering, then they move to a second location, right? And then Balak utters again what the Lord gives him to say, right? This time, Balak is going to focus on the special relationship God has with Israel, right? Where we're here, we can just read it. In verse 21, he has not beheld misfortune in Jacob, nor has he seen trouble in Israel. The Lord their God is with them, and the shout of a king is among them. God brings them out of Egypt and is for them like the horns of the wild ox. For there is no enchantment against Jacob, no divination against Israel. That now it shall be said of Jacob and Israel, what has God wrought? Behold a people. Right. So it's the focus on the second message or the second oracle is about how God is with them.
Yeah.
Right. He's not just a king, a distant king or distant emperor, but actually living amongst them in the tabernacle. This is what we've been covering through in Exodus and Leviticus.
Yeah.
Right. How God walks amongst them. Right. So how could anyone curse Israel? Right. And Balak is very disappointed. In fact, he says, if you're not going to do your job, just don't talk. Just don't bless them. Do not curse them at all, and do not bless them at all. Just keep
Stop
quiet.
talking.
Yeah. And Balaam answers Balak, did I not tell you all that the Lord says that I must do? But for whatever reason, Balak still wants to try one last time. So they go up to a third mountain, right?
All of these 3 locations are locations where they could see the people from afar.
Yes.
Right? It's like they're spying on them.
And in the third location, this is where Balaam sees for the first time the whole.
Kasi portions.
Yeah,
the
he
first
only
2
sees a
times,
section
right.
of the Israelites. And it makes sense why in the first oracle he says, I only wish to live under the blessing of even the fourth part.
Yeah.
Or the drops.
Because they were only seeing.
Because you could only see a small amount of the Israelite camp. But now in the third oracle, right? This one's really interesting because it says that the Spirit of God actually comes upon Balaam.
Wow.
Right? So we only read about that in certain parts of the Bible where God does something amazing,
Mhm.
right? And so here God is doing something amazing
He's
in
like a
this
prophet.
professional sorcerer's
Right.
life, probably the greatest of his career in omens. And in fact, it mentions here that, and this is one of the clues how we know that Balaam is not necessarily the best character, right?
Mm.
Because here it says that on the third time he did not go as the other times to look for omens. So the way that Balaam was still conjuring these oracles was through, some form of sorcery, divination that is really frowned upon in the Israelite religion. So here in the third time, he doesn't use an omen. He doesn't practice divination, and instead the Spirit of the Lord comes over him entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And this is what he says. I'll read the whole one of the third. The oracle of Balaam, the son of Beor, the oracle of the man whose eye is opened, the oracle of him who hears the words of God, who sees the vision of the Almighty, falling down with his eyes uncovered. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your encampments, O Israel, like palm groves that stretch afar, like gardens beside a river. Ding, 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 ding. Our Genesis 1 to 3 radar is on high alert. Like aloes that the Lord has planted, like cedar trees beside the waters. Water shall flow. This is kind of like the river flowing down from the top of Eden, right? Yes. Water shall flow from his buckets, and his seed shall be in many waters. His king shall be higher than Agag, right? And his kingdom shall be exalted. God brings him out of Egypt, and it is for him like the horns of the wild ox. He shall eat up the nations, his adversaries, and he shall break their bones in pieces and pierce them through with his arrows. He crouched, he laid down like a lion, and like a lioness, who will rouse him up? Blessed are those who bless you, and cursed are those who curse you. So fascinating. So fascinating. So here in the third location, Balaam sees the entire camp of Israel, and he sees
Eden.
He sees Eden. It looks like a garden.
Wow.
It looks like well-watered tents in the middle of the wilderness. God had turned these people, right, who were once slaves, who were once, nobodies, into a community that enjoys life with him.
Yeah.
In the midst of the wilderness, they're experiencing Eden. That's what Balaam sees with the help of the Spirit of the Lord.
Wow.
It's incredible.
Yeah. What a contrast from the previous stories.
Yeah.
Where all we've been reading is like the Israelites fighting.
Yeah.
And rebelling and wanting to go back. And all these
having nothing,
things.
having no water,
the
hungry.
Fascinating thing is all of this is happening unbeknownst. Yeah, unbeknownst to Israel.
Yeah.
That here you have their enemies kind of cajoling together, trying to come up with an elaborate plan to curse. To curse Israel.
Yeah.
And here we see God's faithfulness and his grace. Even the enemies they don't see, God has found a way to protect them.
Yeah.
He has blessed them that no divination, no enchantment could come against.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. The story actually ends quite funny. Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam, and he struck his hands together. So remember how Balaam strikes his donkey 3 times? So design pattern anyway.
Yep.
And Balak said to Balaam, I called you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have blessed them not once, not twice, but 3 times. Therefore now flee to your own place. I said, I will certainly honor you, but the Lord has held you back from honor. And Balaam said to Balak, "Did I not tell you, your messengers whom you sent to me? If Balak should give me his house full of silver and gold, I would not be able to go beyond the word of the Lord, to do either good or bad of my own will. What the Lord speaks, that will I speak. And now behold, I am going to my people. Come, I will let you know what this people will do to your people in the latter days." And Balaam proceeds to give 4 more short oracles so that we get a total of 7.
Wow.
Because why not?
Because why not?
And so there's something interesting about the 4th one. We'll talk about that later. The three other oracles, the last 3 are curses on the Canaanite nations. So imagine these Canaanite tribes have come together to get Israelite cursed, but from the world-renowned greatest sorcerer in the region, only to be cursed by him.
I gotta feel bad for them.
And then at the end of it, Balak rose and went back to his place, and Balaam rose and went back to his place. So it's like, if this story is so funny to me, because if I was Balak, I would have gotten a sword and struck it through the chest of Balaam. But apparently they all go home. They live happily ever after. It's such a strange story. But I wanted to talk about the 4th one, which is the one in the middle.
Yes.
And I don't think that was a coincidence. There was probably 7 oracles for a reason, so to highlight the one in the middle.
Yes.
Right? This one is different because the first 3 are oracles that talk about what Balaam sees before him, present tense. Right? Like what he sees about the Israelites. But the 4th one is different. It's a special kind of prophecy.
Right.
And let's read it, the oracle of Balaam, the son of Beor, the oracle of the man whose eyes open. So he opens in the same way that he opens with the 3rd one. So we can imagine, or we can assume that he's speaking these oracles under the Spirit of God, just like the 3rd one, right? The oracle of him who hears the words of God and knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty falling down with his eyes uncovered. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. So he's talking about something that is going to happen in the future, right? In fact, remember, it says that he's going to tell Balak what is going to happen in the latter days. So when we say latter days, we can be thinking of a certain point in the future. But usually when the Bible mentions latter days, it's referring to the final days, right? The days that lead up to, the ultimate act of what God is going to do in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
So Balaam he's sort of entering into this special position inside the divine council where he sees what's going to happen in the latter days. He's perceiving someone.
Yeah.
Right? Someone he's not yet near. He's not yet it's not yet now.
Yes.
But what he sees is a star that will come out of Jacob and a scepter that shall rise out of Israel. So this is all ruling language.
Yes.
Right? The language of a king.
Yeah.
He's describing a king who's going to come out of Israel.
Yep.
Who will crush the forehead of Moab and break down the sons of Seth. Very, very interesting. That's a rabbit hole that we don't have time for. But Edom shall be dispossessed. Seir, also his enemies, shall be dispossessed. Israel is doing valiantly. And one from Jacob shall exercise dominion. Genesis 1.
Yeah.
Right? Subdue and
Rule
the land. Yeah. And destroy the survivors of the cities. So that's the 4th oracle. Somehow, this pagan sorcerer is perceiving the coming of somebody who is going to rule.
Yeah.
Who's going to come out from Israel. and he's going to conquer and overcome the children of Seth, which is basically all of humanity, right? Seth was the third son of Adam and Eve.
Wow.
After Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's very interesting. What do you guys think?
Again, kawawa naman si Balak.
You feel sorry for Balak?
Not really, but you know.
It's coming to him.
So
Yeah.
crazy that this gets revealed to a pagan, to somebody who's not part of God's original
No,
people.
but God clues him in on
Yeah.
his workings
Yeah.
of and his plans for the world.
Yeah.
So there is something clearly messianic that is going on in this part of Numbers. It's
Right.
really one of the most fascinating, right? Talking donkey aside, that somehow, like in the midst of the craziness of the drama of Balak and Balaam, the tension of trying to get Israel cursed,
Yeah.
right? We see that no matter how hard they try, they cannot undo the thing that God has actually set into motion from Genesis 3.
Right.
Right? Let me quickly open up Genesis 3, right? Just to remind our listeners and us. After Adam and Eve fell, right?
Yes.
Or after they rebelled and rejected God's invitation for them to rule, this is what he says, right? Verse 15. I will put enmity between the serpent, right, and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring, between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. Yeah. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Right? So even if, the forces of evil have tried to destroy humanity and God's plan for humanity's God's plan for humanity to rule and partner with him, right? God will not leave things the way they are, but somehow there will be a person, a king, who is going to stand up to crush, right, the head of the serpent.
Yeah.
The seed of the serpent. Is the seed of the serpent, the offsprings of the serpent are going to constantly be in enmity with the seed of the woman, right? But ultimately, one will come to crush I was going to yawn, but it didn't happen. Anyway, but this human is going to crush the source of evil at its very core. And by doing that, it will also crush him. But that is the plot of the Hebrew Bible. And so the reason why we're zooming in on this is because we want to show you, and what we're trying to do by reading Genesis to Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and onward, right, is that all of these stories are wrapped around this singular thread, this large thrust or main plot point.
Yes.
That allows us to say that the Bible is actually this one unified story, right? That is asking the question, who is going to be that human?
Yeah.
Right? This human that even Balaam perceives is coming.
Yeah.
Right? We know that it's not going to be anytime soon because the chapter right after this whole Balaam and Balak incident is about Israel's fall to the seduction of the Moabite women. It's not a very great follow-up to this incredibly gracious and and powerful story of God's faithfulness, right? right after, while God was protecting them from the enchantments and curses of these meddling tribes,
Yeah.
the Israelites were gallivanting and marrying Moabite women, the women of the land, right? Which they were specifically told not to do, and they promised not to do in their covenant with God, as a way for them to be unique and the chosen people that God was going to lead.
Right.
They threw all of that away because they saw some hot Moabite women.
So nag-change tactics si Balak.
Yeah. So maybe
it's quite interesting because here I'm looking at chapter 25. It mentions the daughters of Moab.
Yeah.
And it mentions a Midianite woman.
So
And
it's
those are the two
Yeah.
tribes
That's right.
working
That's right.
together
That's right.
against them.
If they can't curse them, we'll send them hot women.
We'll seduce them.
Exactly. Which is really heartbreaking. And but the point is, the story will not end here.
Yeah.
That, throughout the whole book of Numbers, we see God's faithfulness to his people time and time again, whether or not the Israelites knew about it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Whether or not the Israelites were gallivanting with who knows what and doing who knows what. Right? God was still protecting and leading them. He was creating this mini Eden sanctuary in the wilderness for them, leading them to the promised land. And so what Balaam is perceiving is the thing that we need to continue to look for as we read through the rest of the Bible.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is the hope, right? Not that the Israelites will change, right?
But that somebody will come.
Somebody will come, and he will bring about the transformation of not just the Israelites, but the whole human condition.
Yeah.
That's the story of the Bible.
Yep.
When we turn to Matthew, right? It's very interesting because the story of Jesus. Guys, we're talking about Jesus, by the way.
They didn't get who's that somebody.
You guys, maybe there's one listener who's like, I wonder who this person is. It's really interesting. I've never known that that's what the Bible is about. Anyway, so we're talking about Jesus, and what's interesting is the way that Matthew introduces Jesus. Like the way that he announces the arrival of this person is through the divination of 3 pagan astrologers,
right,
who perceive a star
that
has come up over and above this house in Bethlehem.
Yes.
It's so fascinating. Right? So for sure, all of this is connected.
Yeah.
And we can see how the New Testament is carrying and following the thread of what we see here in Numbers and here in the Old Testament. How even pagan sorcerers cannot deny and cannot reject the thing that or prevent what God is doing.
Yes.
And how he's leading all people to this king.
Wow.
Who rules with grace and truth. Who's going to conquer sin and death. The true enemies of the human condition.
Yeah.
And is going to lead us to the promised land. So, I don't know. Any thoughts?
It's really good to get to read about this story kasi it's one of those things reading about this also puts into perspective everything that happened before. And because I feel like reading the previous stories that we've been reading, like what happened with Korah and with Moses and all of these things, it can be easy sometimes to isolate them and to look at God as as condemning and very strict and so on and so forth, and then you see the bigger picture that's happening here in Numbers. Okay, so all this time, even while all of these things are happening within Israel, God's been protecting them all along. And
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
God's been guiding them. God's been really patient with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then even zoom out further, you look at the bigger story of the Bible. Okay, so this is where
Yeah.
it's all leading. So I think that this story is a good reminder of that. That these different stories that we find, they don't exist in isolation.
No.
It's even richer if you see, okay, so that's how
Yeah.
we see more of who God is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just really love how we see the story of Jesus being like woven here now. We need somebody,
Yeah.
and that we see it all the way to Matthew, like you said, and yeah, I don't know. It's just we're really not meant to read the Bible like by parts,
Yeah.
but it's all really leading towards this one person, and it's all about Jesus.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks for Bible learning with us. It's been fun, and I hope you learned something. We'll see you next week as we cover the last part, the last section of Numbers together.
Yeah.
See you.